Well, welcome to session one of What Christians Believe. Thank you so much for being a part of all of this, and for everyone who's in the room with me, thank you for being here. Everyone watching this at a later moment, thanks for being here. One of the questions that you will hear most often in the world around us, or one of the statements, rather, that you'll hear most often in the world around us today is this statement: it doesn't matter what I believe as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. Has anyone ever heard somebody say that? Doesn't matter what I believe, right? It doesn't matter what I believe. You believe what you believe, I'll believe what I believe. But one of the things that we have to understand, that we have to really get into our hearts, is that it absolutely matters what you believe. Because what you believe dictates everything else in your life. A lot of times people say, well, I keep my spiritual life and my personal or my work life separate. That's not true, because that's something you believe you're supposed to do. That's a truth that you believe, that they should be separate. You can't do anything without bringing your beliefs into it. You can't vote without bringing your beliefs into it. You can't marry someone without bringing your beliefs into it. You can't raise children without bringing your beliefs into it. Your beliefs, or the word that we'll also use for this, your worldview, hits every corner of your life. And so what Christians believe, what this class, what these sessions will do, we'll be talking about Christianity as a way of looking at the world, because that's really what it is. But before we can do that, we have to take a moment and say, how do I currently look at the world? Some of you, if I were to ask you, and I would say, are you a Christian? You'd raise your hands and you'd say, yes, I'm a Christian. If I asked another one, you'd say, I'm pretty sure I'm a Christian. Some of you would say, I don't know. I came to church once and the pastor said hi. Does that make me a Christian? Like, there's all these things that we do and we don't know. So when we say I'm a Christian, what does that really mean? Should that change the way we live? Is that a set of beliefs? Where this came into full view in my life personally was in the summer, many of us remember the summer of COVID, and the summer of 2020. And in the United States, there was all kinds of turmoil, all kinds of disruption, all kinds of unrest. And everyone was pointing at each other and saying this, that, and the other. And a lot of times people would say, well, I'm a Christian and I believe this. And I realized, wow, a lot of people don't know what Christians actually believe about anything. Because if you think that's what Christianity is, I wanted something else to prevail in people's hearts. So what I want to start is get that idea going. And what I really want us all to do during this session, in the next several minutes that we have together, is start not to deconstruct necessarily, but just to be aware, to ask yourself. And as I talk about what the components that we all have of a worldview, that we all share, whether you are from the South or you're from the North, whether you're from this country or you're from another country, whether you are a man or a woman, whether you're old, whether you're young, we all need the same things in life. There's universal spiritual needs. So my question for all of us tonight is, how are you fulfilling them? How have you fulfilled them? Are you doing a good job with it? Are you feeling fulfilled? Some of you may be saying, I was, till I started taking this class. Now I don't know if I am. So we're going to talk about, tonight specifically, we're going to talk about what makes a worldview, what makes a belief system, so that as we go and examine what Christians believe, we can say, wow, I don't know that what I truly believe, does it really line up with what Jesus taught? What I truly believe. I guess I could really call this class What Christians Really Believe. That may be a better one. Because we all say we believe things. If I were to say, how many of you say, I believe God's in control? And I would say, that's great. Then why are you constantly worried? Right? You know? Oh, I believe that I should live a completely surrendered life to God. Okay, then let's talk about your finances, or your job, or your kids. Oh, I believe that all people are created equal. Well, then why do you lock your car when you see certain people coming down the street? See, there's what we believe, what we say we believe, and then there is what we actually believe, right? Can we all be honest and say sometimes those two don't line up? Does it make you a hypocrite? No, it makes you a human being. So for those of you who are feeling this tension, let me welcome you to the human race. Congratulations, you finally made it. We all do that. And if you're here and you're wondering, well, is Christianity the solution to this? I would hope that you would join us on this journey for the next several weeks, because I think of all the worldviews that are available to you out there, For me personally, and I've experienced in my own life, Christianity is the one that checks all of the boxes in a way that is cohesive and has integrity, and I'm never getting crossways. If I'm doing it and I'm getting crossways in my faith, it's because I'm missing something, not because Jesus missed something. So let's spend the rest of our time together talking about this idea of worldview. I have it in your notes, this question. What does it mean to believe something? What does it actually mean to believe something? Now, next week, we'll talk about the concept of belief a little bit more, and we'll talk about how that relates to our belief in Jesus Christ. But really, I want us to focus on this idea of worldview. And you may hear it this way. Worldview, perspective, culture. There's all sorts of different words for it. Belief system, faith. There's all sorts of different words for it. The one we'll use a little bit is worldview. And one of the things that we have to remember is that each of us has a unique worldview. If you're taking notes, that's your first set of blanks. A unique worldview that makes sense of the world around us. Now, this is what's important to remember, is that we all have a unique worldview. None of us, our worldview matches the other. So that's why when you're having a conversation with somebody, you think you're having a lighthearted, fun conversation about, a little, hey, let's just talk a little bit of politics at work. What could possibly go wrong? And you'll say something you think is just light and dismissive and throw it away. And what you've realized is you've tapped into a deep moral sense of their worldview. And now you have worldviews colliding. It can be about money. It can be about politics. I know none of you experience that, but sometimes in marriage, raising children brings a conflict of worldviews. And that turns into the worldview of, well, I was raised this way. And then you say, well, I wasn't raised that way. And then the other one says, well, that explains a lot. And then you say, well, what is that supposed to mean? And before you know it, the words, your mother comes out. And we have a clash of worldviews. You see how that works? But the problem is that I have a tendency, and we all do this, to think my worldview is the only one. And really, when I think it's the only one, that means that it's the right one. But I don't even know where my worldview came from. Well, it's because I'm right. That's just, everybody knows that. Early in our marriage, my wife, Kelly, I would say things, we'd be watching television, and I would just say something, about the trivia on the screen, White Street Channel, and I would say, hey, William Howard Taft once got stuck in the White House bathtub. Just that kind of stuff, right? And she put up with it for about 3 or 4 years, and then one night, I'll never forget it, she says, well, how do you know that? And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, how do you know that? And I'm like, oh, everybody knows that. And she says, I don't know that. Does that make me a nobody? And then I think that, and now I'm like, okay, worldview, collide, danger, Will Robinson, right? Because there are things that we know, but then there are the things that we believe. And if I don't even know how I know something, I really don't know why I believe things. And if I don't know why I believe something, then I'll never understand why someone else doesn't believe that. And that is the recipe for all the conflict in the world throughout all human history. Because we look at something and say, well, everyone thinks that way. No, they really don't. So how do I live in a world? And guys, I don't know if you've noticed this, but less people, if you say, well, I'm a Christian, I was raised in traditional Christian home, traditional Christian values, you throw that word out, traditional, less people agree with you now than ever. Oh, and by the way, even the saying of a traditional Christian worldview, you just said a whole worldview. If I say, well, I have traditional Christian values, that's a worldview. Do you know where that comes from? Do I know why I believe what I believe? Because if I'm not aware of what I believe, then my life is riddled with landmines that could go off in every relationship, in moments of ethical moments, in moments of temptation, in moments of conflict. And I wonder why I'm chaos. And so what our hope is that if I can all I'm really here to do for the next several weeks is say, this is what the Christian worldview is. This is what Christians believe, as simply as I possibly make it. Then really it's up to you to decide, I either believe that or I don't. I'm not going to spend a lot of time convincing you. We won't do a lot of apologetics. We won't do a lot of philosophical arguments. My worldview is, you're either kind of going to believe in God or you're not, and I can't really waste a lot of time trying to get you to believe in something until I believe God works in it. But you have to know it's more important to pay attention to what you believe than what you know. So this is not about knowing Christianity. This is about believing in Christ. A lot of times people take these classes and I want to know more about Christianity. I want to encourage you to stop doing that immediately. Stop trying to know more about Christianity and start trying to believe more in Jesus Christ. And I'll explain what that difference is next week as we talk about that idea. So let's talk about what makes up a worldview. Really quick, these three ideas, and you can follow them on your notes there. There are three big things that make up a worldview. This is basic human anthropology 101. So any religion, anywhere in the world, doesn't matter how ancient it is, how old it is, how new it is, from Scientology to Zoroastrianism to whatever it is, if you have a religious system, and some of you may be watching this or you're here and you're saying, well, I'm not a religious person. That is actually your religion. You are a religious person because you're a person. But anyway, so you have it, and it's built up of these three things. Big ideas here are your ideas, and I'll break these down here in a second. Ideas, feelings, and values. Ideas, feelings, and values. Everything you believe is made up of a set of ideas, of feelings, and values. So here's what happens with Christianity a lot of times. People say, well, I want to become a Christian, or I want you to become a Christian. And we go after ideas. I'm going to convince you to be a Christian. Okay? I'm going to convince you to be a Christian. Or we'll say, feelings. Well, you just need to have a moment with God. And all the idea people are going, I've had moments with God. I'm very happy about my relationship. I'm very passionate. I'm very excited about Jesus. Amen. Like, you're not feeling enough. What's going on inside you, right? And then some of it's values. I need to change the way you behave in what matters. But what happens is when we focus on any one, we leave out the entire thing. And we are offering a truncated form of Christianity. And many of you, if you have conflict with Christianity, if you don't believe it, if you struggle with it, it may be because you're not getting the whole picture. So I want to give you the whole picture. Because Christianity is more than an idea. Christianity is far more than the feelings that you have. And Christianity is more than a value or an ethical system. And it is a set of teachings. And it's a set of experiences. And it's a set of moral teachings. It should inhabit every corner and every area of your life. And if we struggle with Christianity, or if we doubt Christianity, like I did when I was a young person, or we wanted to walk away from Christianity, like I did when I was a young person, it's because I was regulating it or denying its fullness and trying to keep it in one of these areas. So when I talk about ideas, I just want you to think about that. Whatever culture you're a part of, every set of ideas, everything you believe, every teaching, every identification, every label has a set of stories, right? And it has a set of teachings or doctrines. You say, what do you mean? Okay, so you may or know this, I come from Arkansas. I label myself as an Arkansan, right? So that means I'm a University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, Razorback fan. That's a label. That's a worldview that I have. Okay? So the story is, we all know about Barry Foster's, when he hit the line and ran it all, hit this huge touchdown in the Cotton Bowl from the one. That's a story. That's a legend around it. We all know about Quinn Grovey running the option from the 2 because no one else could really play football that well. All that kind of stuff. You have these legends that go around it. If you're from the South, there are stories and legends that are built around being Southern. If you're from New York, there are stories and legends built around being a New Yorker. You don't have anything to do with them, but you're a New Yorker, and it's my story. And you're like, no. But that's how New Yorkers are. And we all understand everyone from Texas is that way, right? That's just why I'm a Texan. You're a Texan. Oh, the Alamo. You're like, that was 100 and some odd years ago. You weren't there. So we have stories. Some religions call them myths. Some worldviews call them legends. We call them histories. So Christianity has its stories that we use to create idea. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And then we have the doctrines. And this is what everyone wants to narrow slice Christianity to, is just this handful of teachings. And it's usually thou shalt not do this. And we love to say, don't do this, don't do this. And you're like, hey, the same book that says don't do this also says you need to do these other things. We're like, don't worry about that, I'm over here. So you have doctrines. You have this is what it is, and those are your ideas. So I want you to start thinking, What are the stories of my life? What are the stories of my family? Are there stories that we tell as a family that propagate my personal view of the world? I remember when Dad got fired from the factory, and that proved to me that you can't trust anybody. You have a story that creates a legend, that creates a truth. Do you see how that works? And we all do it. You can find it from every part of your life, from your high school victories to your church, to your own family history, to whatever part of the country you're from your nationality, to your gender, to your ethnicity, your economic status. We all have these stories, and we all have certain truths. Now, as I said earlier, I want you to be reminiscent of what are the truths that I say I believe, and then what are the truths that I actually believe. Because as Christians, we would say, love your neighbor as yourself. But many of us, the truth that we live by is you can't trust anybody and everybody's out to kind of screw you over. So you're going to live that. You're going to live in that tension. So you just have to start asking yourself, what do I really believe? Like, what do I really believe? When I was in high school, we had this man in our church. So I grew up in a form of Christianity, a tradition called Pentecostalism. And it can get a little wild, but one of the things, we believe in miracles, or we say we believe in miracles. I think that's important. We say we believe in miracles. And we had this guy that went to my church growing up, and he told me one time that he ran out of gas one time, and he prayed over his truck, and it filled up with gas, and he never had to buy gas again. Now, I said I believed in miracles until he told me that story. And I'm like, really? Really? I don't know that I believe you, sir. But wait, I said I believe that God can do anything. Like I say that. I say it all the time. I say it in church. I say it in songs. I clap it. I don't just say it. I sing it. Like we do all of that kind of stuff. But then when it comes down to it, and the only phrase I can think of is, do I really believe it? Like when I need a miracle, do I really believe in miracles? When it comes time every Sunday to pray with people after church, do I really believe that God's going to do something for them? Some of you are wondering, do you? I'm not going to answer that question. Okay. You're like, that's why Pastor Charlie prays for me. Okay. So those are the ideas. So I want you to think of that. Start thinking, what are some of the stories? Ask your spouse, ask your family members. What are some stories that kind of dominate our family discussion? Some of you may say, I don't have any stories. That's a story in and of itself. Some of the stories are true, but if you're Southern, more than likely they're legends. Let's all be honest with each other. But don't underestimate the power they have to shape who you think you are and what you really believe. So we have ideas, and then we have feelings. And I know many of you are already uncomfortable because I said the word feelings in church. But your feelings really do matter, because part of your feelings are your rituals, and you all have little rituals, by the way, whether it's where you put your shoes at night, how you start your car, how, if you're like me, okay, keys, wallet, phone. Like you all have rituals. You do little things that help you bring some level of order to your life. Okay? Now, church can have a lot of rituals, or they can say they don't have any rituals. But if you pay attention, even in churches that don't say they have a lot of rituals, have a ton of rituals, right? I guarantee that most of you pull in the parking lot the exact same way every Sunday. And if you don't find the spot that you parked in on your first Sunday 15 years ago, you're like, someone's in my spot. I don't know what's going on. And your whole Sunday's ruined because your little ritual got thrown off. And you say, well, I'm not that uptight. You are about something. But rituals are important because rituals help bring the story to life. A ritual like being baptized in water. A ritual like communion. Even a simple ritual like bowing your head to pray to remind you that we come from this position, not from this position to our God. These little rituals. But more important, well, as importantly, but maybe more critically, are the experiences. The experiences that have shaped your life. There are things you believe solely because of what's happened to you. And you have to start asking yourself, has that affected my faith or my worldview in such a way? Some positive experiences, like, let me tell you something. The guy with the gas in his truck, that's an experience. It changed that guy's life forever. Okay? But some of you have the experience of being in your home and having the power shut off. And that's affected how hard you work. I never want to do that again. Some of you had the experience of never having enough to eat, and that affects the way you spend your money today. That's an experience. There's no belief, there's no value, but we talk about it as the right way to do things. But what we've done is we've taken an experience and we use it to create a worldview. And what is a worldview? It's the way that we make sense of the world. So I have to understand, if someone says, well, I don't know that I could ever trust God, I could get upset because that's not a good idea, but there may be a valid feeling embedded in that as a discipler, I have to examine. And for some of us, or some of you that may be watching again or a part of this, and you're struggling with trusting God, ask yourself, why? I'll talk a little bit in a couple of weeks that I guarantee it probably has less to do with God and probably more to do with one of his crazy fans. But ask yourself why. Ask yourself why you don't like to go to church all that much. Ask yourself why you'd rather be, out on the boat or out on the bay on a Sunday than in church with God's people. Ask yourself why you don't like talking to your spouse about faith. Ask yourself why you always fight about money. Ask yourself why. And it's not just going to be ideas. I'm willing to bet that at all those levels, at some point, there's an experience, a moment where you felt something viscerally. So we have ideas, we have feelings, and then we have values. Values, or relationships, is what one anthropologist calls them. These are the relationships of your world, your values, right? Now, one value obviously is ethics. Now, when I talk about ethics, these are the morals and the rules, written or unwritten, okay, that we expect of ourselves and others, right? And oftentimes we have a completely different set of rules for ourselves than we do for everybody else, but that's neither here nor there. I'm the world's worst about this. I live in a constant state of hypocrisy when I'm driving. I will own that now. I will just be honest about it. I have a right to do whatever I want to do when I'm behind the wheel. You do not. So we have a clash of worldviews. Luckily, we don't have a clash of cars, but our worldviews clash. It happened to me today. This guy, again, 181. I come out on 181, and this guy's on me. He's just on me, and he starts cutting around me. And so what do? I graciously allow the Spirit to speak to me, and I say, that guy's under a lot of stress, and he has to go somewhere. No, I start slowing down immediately just to be cheap and petty, right? I don't want anyone to think I've nailed this Christian thing, by the way. I'm working on I'm much better at the ideas, okay? But what happens? So then we get down there and he skirts off. He goes down there and I pull up, and then the smug satisfaction of being at the light at the same time. Like you stressed everybody out. Well, that's not good. But I have a value, right? So what are your ethics? What do you believe is right and wrong? And where did that come from? Where do your ethics come from? Now, if you say, well, I'm a Christian, I follow Jesus, great start. If you say, well, I believe I can make up my own ethics. Again, it doesn't matter what I believe as long as I'm a good person. Well, who's defining what's good? Who gets to say what is good and what's bad? What's the definition of your ethics? And then in the values, there's also the community that you inhabit, the people in your world. Some of the most critical decisions you'll ever make are the answer to Mr. Rogers' question, who are the people in your neighborhood? And by your neighborhood, I mean your life. Who gets to help shape your worldview? Who gets to have a voice? Who gets to have a vote? Who is telling you what to believe? And that's massive, because I think as a pastor and a theologian, what I witnessed several years ago was a lot of people quit listening to Jesus and started listening to Facebook. And Facebook and political leaders and charlatans and snake oil salesmen and grifters, in my opinion, were starting to not just tell people what to think, but somehow they started telling the church what to think. And people were saying things that didn't sound like what Jesus says. That's my issue. And you can say, well, Brian, are you... No, don't just... My only concern is does it sound like something Jesus would have said? Because I believe, hopefully, what I believe. So the values, so that idea of the community. So part of what you're going to have to start asking yourself is, who is in my community? Who is telling me how the world works? So then, here are the questions. Here are the questions I want you to guide through and really have in your perspective over the next several sessions. Number one, what are my foundational ideas? Really, what do you believe? And you're like, I've never thought about it. Okay, well, one of your foundational ideas is to never think about what you believe. That's obviously a big value to you. But just ask yourself, what do I really believe? What do I believe about God? What do I believe about people? What do I believe? Just what do I believe? Like, what do I believe? Not what you know. That's 2 + 2 = 4. That's what you know. I'm talking about what you believe, because what you believe, and I will say it multiple times over these sessions together, and you'll hear me say it again and again, what you believe is always more powerful than what you know. It's always more powerful, okay? So what are my foundational ideas? What do I believe about God and the world around me? Do I believe that the world's a good place? Do I believe that the world's a bad place? Do I believe that God is good? Or do I believe that God is kind of angry? Do I believe in people or I don't believe in people? What do I really believe? And then secondly, what are my core feelings? What experience or moments have shaped me? I mean, think about just your core emotional state, your core feeling. Anxious, angry, peaceful, tired. Hey, man, how many people, your core emotion is tired? Yeah, I mean, whatever, right? Hungry, that may be another one. But what is that state? What is the constant state of your experience? Where do you find yourself in? Like that core idea. I'm not talking about the occasions where it's good or it's bad. I'm talking about on the most, how do you feel? And then ask yourself, what experiences brought me there? You're like, I don't know that I'm ready to do that. Okay, well then keep it shallow. Or make your spouse do it and just talk about them all the time. Okay? And then what routines and habits order my world? What are some rituals that are important to you? Maybe it is the beach every Saturday. That's a ritual I have to have. Maybe it's I have to read my Bible in the morning. Maybe it's I have to have my coffee in the morning. But these rituals shape and order your life. And then finally, what are my guiding values? How do I live and how do I expect others to live? What is right and wrong? What is really like right and wrong? And then who surrounds me? Who's helping shape those values? Who in my life helps shape my values on a regular basis? So that's really the idea of a worldview. And in every worldview, there are ideas, feelings, and values. And in each of those ideas, there are stories and doctrines, there are rituals and experiences, there are ethics, and there are community. Every religion, every worldview, every government system, every national identity, everything is made up of the same thing. So what begs the question then, is all of that in my life and in your life being formed by Jesus? Does Jesus get to be a part of that conversation? We'll talk more about that next week. So one thing then that I've realized and I've worked on over the years and really came to terms with is this idea that each of us kind of has our own unique spiritual perspective. I think this is actually hopefully going to be beneficial to some of you. Each of us has our own unique spiritual perspective. That's why we have weird conversations about like faith. And we'll say things like, well, I don't understand why you just don't believe. And then the person you're saying that say, I don't understand how you could believe that. And you're like, well, don't you know this? And someone will say, I could care less about that. And we're like, I don't understand. And people say, well, I don't understand why you don't care more about holiness in our nation. And that same person will get in a fight and say, well, I don't understand why you don't care about the poor. And we're fighting, and it's all because you are sort of built to see the world in a way. So what I want to do, without being weird or strange, is kind of give you some frameworks to see that, all right? So, how do I approach the world? That's your spiritual perspective. Now, these are not concrete. These are not absolute. These are not, I would not go get a tattoo of yours made. At the end of the assessment, there is a way to post it to social media, but you're on your own. I take no responsibility. I don't even know if this, I should say. But really, what we found, and anthropologists have found this in their study of human religion, human work, there's certain axes or certain spectrums that we look at the world on, right? We're kind of trending this way or trending that way. So let's talk about those. I'll give them to you, right? So one of them is you either trend towards transcendent or you trend toward immanent. You say, well, Brian, that's a really big word. What does that mean? Well, number one, I use big words. That's a part of my worldview. I'm never going to stop using big words. I just want to throw that out there. Why? Because it's the right word. Part of my worldview is that there are right words and there are wrong words, and I use right. Okay, sorry. All right. Got a little worked up there. Immanent means my feet are on the ground. Transcendent means my head is in the clouds. Depending on who you are, you're a my feet are on the ground kind of guy or my head's in the clouds kind of guy. And right now I can see it. It's already starting. This is my favorite part. Everyone's like, oh, that's totally you. And the person you're saying is transcendent isn't paying attention right now, just so you know. Like, what'd he say? What happened? So when you think of a situation, one of the perfect examples is someone comes to you and says, I'm sick. A transcendent person may say, let's pray. And an immanent person is going to say, have you taken any medicine? Right? So my mom would be a very immanent person because I would say, Mom, I don't feel well. And she would say, have you gone to the bathroom? Because that was my mother's cure for everything. You had to go to the bathroom, then you had to take a shower. And if you weren't better by then, maybe you went to the doctor. But it's usually in that order. Right? My stomach hurts. Have you? Okay, anyway. So that's immanence. That's like, no, it's right here in front of us. I'm not looking beyond. I'm looking right here. I'm looking down. Some people, you're like, hey, man, I'm not doing good. And you're like, oh, man, enemy's coming against you, bro. Some people are like, man, I got a ticket. Someone's going to say, yeah, you were speeding. Somebody's like, man, that sounds like a spiritual attack. Transcendent, immanent. Heavenly minded, feet on the ground, right? And we're all kind of on. Now, very few people are absolute in either direction. It's all about trends, okay? Then the next one is this idea of abstract or concrete, which is how do you like to know things, right? Some of you are like, I got to know. So these are what I call the dinosaur people. What do you mean by that? They're like, I can't follow Jesus. You haven't answered the dinosaur. Where did the dinosaurs come from? And then you meet people and you're like, do you care about the dinosaurs? They're like, I could care less about dinosaurs. God's love, I'm good. People are like, well, what about the time when the sun stood still for Hezekiah? What would that have done on a cosmological level? It would have disrupted all of creation. Did God stop all of space-time? And the fuzzy people or the abstract people are like, man, that's a groovy story, bro. That's just so awesome. Right? It's very simple. Abstract people, how far is it? It's about 20 minutes. Concrete people, it's 72 miles. Right? How much did you spend? That's a very concrete or abstract question. How much did you spend today? Not much. Fuzzy, abstract answer. Concrete, I spent 35 cents. And I have it itemized. Right? I can't even make eye contact with some people right now because I know too many stories. Okay, this is not a marriage group. I just feel like I need to say that. Okay, so we have immanent and transcendent. In other words, am I looking up or looking down? We have abstract. I like my truth sort of fuzzy, and I'm okay with things being ambiguous. I'm okay with things. And what happens is a lot of times when you're like trying to share faith with somebody, and you're like, man, it's the love of God. That's all that matters. And they're like, no, I need to know if Adam had a belly button or not. I cannot come to Jesus until you tell me what was before. And it's like, man, it was a big bang. God spoke it and bang. You're like, that's not enough. That's that abstract. And we wonder why we can't communicate with people. There are whole cultures. Whole cultures are abstract, right? Whole cultures are abstract, where some are very concrete. That's sort of the big east-west divide culturally, right? All of these sorts of things. And then finally, the internal or the external life. Sometimes introverted or extroverted, but I think that those terms get way too, it just gets way too more from a spiritual sense of point of view. What I mean is, do I tend to live my life inside, or do I tend to live my life outside? And what do I mean by that? It's very simple. The interior person, when they sin, will disappear. The external person, when they sin, will typically let everyone know. And they'll like run to the altar, and they'll cry, and they'll weep, and they'll post it on Facebook, and they'll be like, man, God's so good because I did this, that, and the other. And you're like, bro, that's wow. Okay? Or when they watch someone else sin, the internal person will go, oh, that's a shame. The external person will let you know what you did because their life is out here. Notice I said their life, so I just kind of let you know which one I am. That was not intentional. So internal or external. So what you can do is when you place these on these axes, you can see there's an identity that comes with that. So the QR code that's in your notes that you can find on your notes, all that kind of stuff, you can scan that, and hopefully it'll just give you a sense of helping people understand how I see the world. And if you're having a spiritual conversation with someone, invite them to take it. so that you can understand how they see the world. Because you may be a philosopher and you're trying to have a conversation with a worshiper, and I'm going to tell you right now, that's not going to work. Because you don't care about the same things. And you don't need the same things. You don't need your ideas to be met in the same way. You don't need your feelings to be met in the same way. And you don't need your values to be evaluated in the same way. But I can't know that about anybody else till I know it about me. Okay? And that's really what we'll do. So over the next week we start getting into the teachings of what Christians believe from a doctrinal sense. But each one of those doctrines will carry stories. It will also carry feelings and experiences, and it will carry values and ethics. So whichever one seems to sort of, light you up a little bit more, the goal is that something will touch each of us in order so that it can reach all of us. Let me go through some of these real quick. There's the I should do this QR code. I don't know what you do right now. Like, I'm just supposed to stand here. Oh, you scan it. I didn't think that through. Okay. All right, let's just skip it. Sorry. So needy. So these are the titles that I use: seeker and philosopher, a traveler and a friend, a worshiper and a disciple, and a follower and an advocate. What I'll do is I will mail out the broader descriptions of each of these. When you take it, you'll get yours, but I will then email out and give you a chance and access to a document that has all of them on there. If it works for you, awesome. If it doesn't work for you, blame the company. No, you blame me, actually. But the biggest point is this, and as we wrap it up tonight, this is what I want you to remember, is to start thinking about what you believe, about why you believe it, and how that affects the way you live your life. That's really the goal. Because what we're going to start seeing over the next several weeks is that if Jesus is at the center of every idea, if Jesus has become the center of my experiences, and Jesus is the center of my values, that's when I can begin to say, I'm a Christian, because Christ is at the middle. And for those of you who are with us, either watching or whatever, that struggle with the idea of being a Christian, I would invite you to ignore Christianity for the next several weeks and just pay attention to Jesus and focus on him and see what he has to say. And if you need to ignore me, that's fine. Just pay attention to Jesus. If you need to ignore all those voices, that's fine. But what I'm going to do, hopefully, is be a faithful steward of what Jesus taught us to believe. And from there, we can begin to understand what Christians believe. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your goodness and your mercy and your grace towards us. As we start this journey together, God, I pray that you would solidify in each of our hearts what it means to follow you. We love you. We thank you. We do all of this in the name of the one in whom we trust, Jesus Christ. Amen. So what I want us to do is at your tables, here's what we're going to do. If you're at a table right now, it's 7:13, which for those of you who have been a part of theology class, that is officially a land speed record. So I'm very proud of myself. Here's what we're going to do. I want everyone to turn in towards your tables. All right? Well, a few minutes together. Okay? Someone be a leader back there. Come on. In the platinum, in the diamond club back there. Come on. Huddle up back there, guys. Let's go. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You're loud. And you're like, there's a reason I sat back here in the row so I wouldn't have to talk to anybody. That's all the interior life people right there. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to count to 3, and when I get to 3, everybody point to someone at your table. Ready? 1, 2, 3, point. Okay? All right. Your worldview may be, I never win anything. Well, congratulations. Just take some time, work with the people around, don't overthink it. We've got a few questions for you that I'd like you to just to get to know each other by. And enjoy your discussion time together. God bless you. Thank you. What? The questions are on the thing. Okay. I trust you. to do your best. Just remember, guys, this isn't like Oprah or group therapy. It doesn't just enjoy each other's company. Get to know each other. Yeah, or you know what? In the back, maybe split it in half and take this big circle and turn it into two. That might make it a little easier.